Namaste, yogis. Welcome to the Happy Jack Yoga Podcast. I'm Happy Jack, live from Govardhan Eco Village, Maharashtra, India. And I'm live with
Happy Hanna, live from the headquarters of Happy Jack Yoga in Bracebridge, Ontario, Canada.
amazing. It's beginning to, I should ask, is it beginning to feel like Christmas? It's December. That's the month of your birth, which is very exciting times for you. I've heard people say, get ready. I think it was Sarah who's on the call with us from the UK saying, get ready for the snow when you get back for Canada. How are the vibes feeling back there?
Vibes are amazing. Yes, it is beginning to feel like Christmas. We had snow since I got home, and yesterday, minus 15, I went for a walk. You know, when the eyelashes turn white from your own breath and your hair and everything you breathe on turns all white.
Mm,
Um, so yes, it feels very Christmassy and it's my favorite season. I love this time of year.
yeah, it is a beautiful time of year. It's funny you say it was minus 15, which is a good chilly temperature. Here, it's getting cold. It was plus 15, early this morning at 4 a.m. And you could see the monks are just bundled up in their blankets and their winter hats and their scarves. And I'm still in a t-shirt because like 15 with no wind is still t-shirt weather. Um, but it's all perspective. But I love that. Again, I think I've said it on recent calls. I'm loving every minute here in India, and the reason I'm staying is because I'm attending an Oxford retreat next week, and otherwise, I'm also yearning to come back home. It's just that time of year to be with family, to go for some swims. My brother's still, jumping in the lake daily. Him and our neighbor Steve, and just being. I think just being with family is a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah, I do not jump in the lake at this time of year anymore, but I I think it's amazing if you enjoy that. And it's really beautiful at your brother's and your parents' house where you're in the nature and yeah, you're gonna love it once you get back.
It's all about the how you feel after,
Mm.
right? It's just it wakes you up immediately, jumping in the ice. But we'll save those shares for next month when back in Canada. But still, like the retreat, I guess the India retreat is a couple weeks complete now. And we got some yogis that were there. Sarah was there, Eula was there, Deanna was there, and I'm sure others who are listening.
They were there in spirit.
Yeah, exactly. Pam and everything that she created, really brought the online community together that whole week so that they were truly, genuinely there in spirit. But I just finished writing a little blog. I'm not a big writer. Actually I shouldn't speak that into existence because I'd like to start writing more. But I'm traditionally, it's not like my nature to do a lot of journaling. But a friend asked, when we shared some of the photos from the retreat, they're like, you got to do a write up, please, do a write up. So just today, using a little bit of chat GPT assistance, but of course, putting, the essence of our experience into it and wrote a little blog and really the punchline or what stood out to me, it was just truly one of the most fulfilling just that's it, fulfilling, nourishing experiences of my life, to be in an environment like this and to share the people with the yogis that we love most, with our community. And it was just an absolute joy. And looking through the photos, like my goodness, our friend Lowdy, Hunter and I were just talking right before going live, he did it again, 450 photos that are just incredible, just captured some magic moments. And those will start coming out. The retreat community has seen them. I'm sure we'll get them out to the rest of the community as well. But I don't know, thoughts on that, Hannah? Lowry's photos, magic moments.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we talk about this weeks after the event is over means that we are still feeling the impact of it very vividly, and that shows how beautiful the experience was, how deeply touching it was. And I read your blog post and I loved it. And what I loved most about it is that you were able to capture the diversity of the things we did together in 1 week. Like, I know that you made the schedule as kind of like essential as you could. Like, in your nature would have been to share even more magic
Hmm.
moments with everyone. I know you've worked really hard to take things away from the schedule to keep it less overwhelming. And yet it was so rich, and the experiences we had were so diverse. And then what I actually loved most is the impact. You were able to describe a little bit the impact of this week of, it wasn't just like a spiritual high. It wasn't just a chain of events of like, whoa, impressions of like, oh, look at this and look at that and come here, and like wanting to like provoke spiritual highs. But I feel like reading about the impact that the yogis had, people who spontaneously start connecting with the loving forces of the universe.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter what you call it, whether it's the Maha Mantra or whether it's Jesus or Buddha, or in fact, research shows that people of any spiritual tradition, when you look at their brains, when they are in prayer and in meditation, the same areas of their brain light up. So I'd like to
Hmm.
think that it means that spirituality works and it has an impact on us. And the fact that this retreat was so spiritually rich and inspiring, people would leave there and bring that with them home spontaneously. Like it's no longer like, oh, it's part of my regime or my routine. Although for some it is because they love routines, but it was more than that. It touched us so deeply that we left home changed, and then we remained that way. So that's again to the point that it's not a spiritual high, but it is something that permanently, like a gift you can give yourself that permanently changes you. And I often say that about India, right? Like you'll come, and in the prep calls I'll tell them, and you'll leave with all these impressions and these experiences that were amazing, and spiritually, energetically, you will be forever changed. It's not just like, oh, bucket list done, been there, although it can be that too. But I also have seen, and it's also my experience, that this type of environments and this type of experiences, because it becomes your own experience, it's no longer theory, it's no longer scripture, it's no longer something that other people do, or like this quest or it's something mystical. It becomes your own experience, and that's what changes you. Like if you look into personality change, like the research doesn't, it depends where you look, what research you look, but there's like a lot of conversations on like what is actually realistic to expect in terms of change as a result of therapy or you know coaching or any interventions we might choose or not choose to participate in. But for me, when I read your blog, I read about people who had incredible, beautiful, life altering experiences that they bring home with them. They're able to connect with the loving forces of the universe in a different way now. And that's
Yeah.
beautiful to me.
Yeah, I love so much in what you share. A few things you talked about, like it's not just a bucket list. Although for some this was like a once in a lifetime, right? Some of our yogis are carrying a baby, so they
Mhm.
came, they were able to sneak into India, our good friend Renee, and had this like, beautiful, beautiful experience. And for the next few years, perhaps she may not be returning, and yet others, like nearly half the group, 18 yogis, are already signed up, enrolled, ready to go for 2026. So to your point, like it could be a bucket list, a once in a lifetime trip to the birthplace of yoga, and others it's like, hey, this is it's like either I'm going to go and lay on the beach and sip margaritas, which maybe for some is appealing, but or doing this, transformational journey. But I guess as I wrote the blog and as I think about it now, it makes me think about, and I invite all of us to think about, what is the purpose of life? Like this is why, like when we have an experience like this that's so rich and so nourishing and fulfilling, it just begs me to ask the question of like, is this the purpose of life? Or how is this somehow connected? Because I feel like there's something about this experience, and and then you and I were talking, we want to do more of this, so of course we're doing our USA retreat in West Virginia, we're doing the Muskoka retreat in Canada. Eventually we got to get something going in UK/EU. Yeah, thumbs up from Sarah and others. And so that will happen. And even beyond this though, like something I would sit and have meals with the monks every day, and like they're encouraging me. They're like, even in addition to the online satsang that we can have, in addition to the retreats, even coming together in person locally, I actually feel deeply inspired. It might not be a weekly thing, it might not even be like a regularly occurring thing, but to periodically get some of the yogis who are kind of local to us, like Angie and Lorraine and Krista. I saw Sue's hand come up. If you can get yourself to Muskoka, and periodically let's come together and let's be in satsang, be in community, but we'll have some nice prasadam, which is food prepared with love. We'll sing some kirtan. We'll sing some mantras. We'll discuss the yogic texts. And how is it relevant for us in our lives? I don't know. I think I've talked about this a few times, like, oh, maybe do this with my brother and our neighbor Steve, but we've got some yogis right in the community who are like really yearning and hungry for these kind of experiences. So anyways, I'm just putting it out there, because by the way, Hanne, it might be hosted at your house because it's kind of central.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And I would love for my home to be such a sacred place. But, you're asking questions like, what is the purpose of life? And it sounds like you're having really deep conversations with the monks every day at every meal. And that is really beautiful. And having experienced that, it's kind of hard to not think like, or it's easy to see why they would choose a life like that. Sometimes we think of like the lives of monks as renunciation and hardship and rigor. And I'm sure there's some of that for sure. But then also seeing the monks, meeting them, they were young people, like younger than you and I, many of them. And not just old men, like, hunched over and thinking about existential questions. Like they were fully alive, fully engaged, fully relatable. Even like many of them are not relatable because they're so brilliant, like there's life stories and their education, or like then we think that in India everything is poor and broken, and like we have these narratives that might also not be true at all for everyone. Like of course there is that too, like there is in every country. But what was so beautiful about the whole environment was it that it is so accessible, it's so alive, it is so relatable. And it's beautiful that you're immersed in that, and you're having these conversations with the monks. And I can see, we all can see, we reap the benefits of that as being your friends and being in your vicinity, in your association, that we get to hear a little bit about the insights and the ideas that you get from there. And that's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. But then I wanted kind of discuss with you a little bit the conversation on like what's the purpose of life and how is all of this relevant, you know, um, to a modern day person who's not looking to become a monk. We're just trying to, be the best we can and do the best we can with the people in our lives, get over ourselves and be of service.
Mm.
And so, as of today, how would you answer those two questions? What's the purpose of life, and how is all of this relevant to someone
Mm.
who's actually interested in yogasana or maybe a yoga teacher training at, if they're really deeply interested in yoga?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of things come to mind. One is something that you discovered or you highlighted during the retreat here in India, and that was the purpose of life is to love and to be loved. So that indicates a reciprocity, right? It's not just love. It's not just you're a mother, Hanna,
Mm.
and the purpose of life is just to love your children like crazy. That's like half the equation. It's also to be loved, right? You need to receive that. And it's not always 50-50. Sometimes in relationships, one person has more energy to love the other. So I love that idea of being part of the purpose of life. And then, I mean, in the realm of yoga, I'm in this Bhagavad Gita lecture series the past week, and there's different types of yoga, right? There's karma yoga, which is like the yoga of action, like, kind of being of service. Then jnana yoga, which is like the yoga of wisdom and renunciation, really simplifying. And
Mm.
then Ashtanga yoga or dhyana yoga meditation, we're a little bit more familiar with Patanjali. And then this bhakti yoga, which is the immersion that we've been doing here in India. And according to Bhagavad Gita, there is a hierarchy. They're all beautiful paths. They all lead to the destination, and some are just more potent. And bhakti yoga is presented as the highest yoga. And essentially that's what it is to love and to be loved. It's the yoga of love, the yoga of devotion, the yoga of unconditional selfless service. And so I think that that's part of the answer, is to love. And I think that's why our experience of this retreat, connects with that, because we were practicing bhakti yoga, we were living amongst a community of people who have completely devoted their lives to this yoga of love. And yeah, so I guess those are some of the thoughts that initially come to mind.
I love that. So it sounds like the different styles of yoga, almost they sound like different ways to participate uh, in spirituality or in spiritual practice. And it also sounds to me like you don't have to choose one. It sounds like even though you might be a bhakta, someone who practices bhakti yoga, you'll still do karma yoga because you're being of service,
Mm.
right? So sometimes they meet, but maybe the main practice or the main focus where you're at now is bhakti yoga, which is the art of loving and being of service to God through all of these different ways that we can exist, right? There's a lot of choices we
Mm.
have in how that comes to life, right? And there's instructions in the Gita and in the spiritual traditions on how this love takes form, right? And
Yeah.
I was thinking about like how you pointed out like the purpose of this yoga is to love and be loved as well. So it goes both ways. And I think, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but like for many modern day yogis, it's difficult to know how they need to be loved, right? Based on childhood patterning or personality style or many reasons. It could be, tricky to know in relationship. Like this is how, like it doesn't feel right. Something like there, it's always to me to be loved is like a healing opportunity. If there is any uncertainty around how do I need to be loved? And why doesn't this feel right? Like you and I decided to uncouple. It's not that simple to just love and be loved. Like we didn't know how to love each other in the ways that the other one would have needed. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so just to clarify that, because this is a really good point to help
Mm,
clarify. So bhakti yoga, or this yoga of love, it's not the traditional love, like the love that we know. Hey, I love you. It's
mm,
true, I do. But that like is divine love, prema. That's kind of our goal. This love for the divine, because everything in this world is temporary. I mean, just to bring up a topic from last week, and to again hold our baby Coco in our hearts, right? Coco has recently passed away, and as will all of us. Like life is temporary, life is delicate. It's and so knowing that there is suffering, there is heartache. These kind of things are just a part of the material world, and there's a beauty in it, and there's a richness in it. But there's the duality of also, there's happiness, but there's also suffering. There's hot, cold, etc. And so this idea that bhakti yoga, or connecting to something greater than ourselves, whether you use the word Jesus Christ or Buddha or Krishna or divinity or the universe or Mother Nature, Panchamama, whatever it happens to be, that word that works. But something greater than ourselves, something eternal,
mm.
right? And then of course the yoga texts teach us that our essence, who we are, is actually also eternal. We so quickly relate to this physical body and this mind, because right now I can see your body and our minds are interacting. So we're so entangled. It's not bad, but we're just so genuinely entangled in this idea that I'm a male Canadian yoga teacher. It weighs whatever, 150 pounds, da da da, all these like statistics. That's not who we are. Like we're something so much more than that. And so this bhakti yoga helps us awaken to the fact of that, and also yeah, and it helps us to navigate the material world that we're in, because it is a reality. We're in this life, we're going to lose loved ones, and yeah, but I guess it's, the other thing is, otherwise we're often seeking for distractions, right? And we've all been guilty of it, whether it's a Netflix or a social media or something, right? Where either we're bored, or we're looking for distractions, or we don't want to deal with the emotions. But this practice, and really the time we spent together in India, right? It wasn't we weren't well, we did watch a documentary. We did have a movie night, but it was kind of spiritually inclined. But otherwise, we weren't checking out. We were connecting in, and that's the practice. That's yoga.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it makes sense. You're talking about divine love versus interpersonal love. Although sometimes I do think that there also is a link in, because we are having the human experience, and what stands in our way of being fully capable of loving and being of service um, is something that we can process in this life. It's part of the dilemma of having a body and a personality and a past. And
Mm.
though what we're discussing with yoga, which is union, just like religion also comes from the Italian word. Radhanath Swami told us it's a word that also means union, because rilegare means bring together, like the back of a book, right? You sew it
Mm.
together. That means the purpose then of religion too would be to connect us with something divine, just like yoga
Mm.
can be, you know, or is really ultimately a method of connecting with the divine. And so coming to the conversation of how is all of this relevant, one thing that I was just looking into, because I'm writing my psychotherapy papers, is, how spirituality is, if you look into the research of Lisa Miller, we've talked about her a lot of the times, and you had her also at Harvard Divinity School as a lecturer at some point. She says that, and her work shows that spirituality is like incredibly, like, I wonder if it's like between 80 and 90%. Don't quote me on this. We'd have to Google this, but like it's really, really protective against depression, suicide, anxiety, all the things that our society is known for. And Lisa Miller claims that it's a crisis of spirituality, because when we have, pathology in terms of psychology, when we're having mental health issues, a lot of times it comes down to purpose and meaning. And having any spiritual access in your life protects us from mental health issues. So what that means, for instance, in my case, and I didn't realize this at a time, so this is a fairly recent like insight for me to put it in this way. And although I've been saying it all along, so I will say nothing new to you today, Jack. You'll just say, like, yeah, I've heard you say that many times. But when my husband died, I had spiritual experiences where I understood that the soul is eternal. Until that moment, I thought, I didn't think much, first of all. I was just busy being a mom, living the dream, and it was beautiful. But then when everything crashed, something else opened, and I doubt that I would have. It was really hard, so it doesn't erase the pain, but if I had not had access to, or had those spiritual experiences and started studying spirituality, I would have had an even harder time. And so that's just one example of how spirituality is an incredibly protective mechanisms. And sometimes I remember feeling like people thought a little bit like I was a little bit crazy because I leaned into spirituality at that time. And I wasn't always hiding it from others. And I would hide it because of the fear of being judged for being like woo woo or whatever, like, the kind of materialistic Western left brain thinking or right brain, which one is the logical one? I forget because they're crossed. The paradigm there is that there isn't really, like, it's a weakness to believe in something, or that you're a little bit woo woo, or you have, like, I felt like they understand, like they understood my spirituality as wishful thinking. Like, I'm doing so not great that I have to start, magical thinking because I'm in so much pain. Whereas it turns out that humanity has leaned into spirituality since time immemorial. And we have all these different expressions of spirituality depending on the culture that we come from. And where I come from, Finland, at that time, the common reality, or Norway for that matter, Italy for that matter, because those were the countries that I was mostly in at those times, we didn't have a very strong spiritual practice that was kind of mainstream accepted as normal. Yes, there's people who believe in all of those countries, but it's not in the, I didn't really grow up with it as a network that you can lean on for divine love or purpose and meaning and explanations for the paradox that life is. So that's how spirituality is relevant. It is incredibly protective when we navigate difficult things.
Yeah.
And so that's just been something that I realized just this week, in how how spirituality is like a protective mechanism in our lives. And not because we lean into denial, but because we lean into a bigger picture. Like you said, it's not to be loved, and to love and to be loved is not just like interpersonal between you and me, Jack, although it is that too. But really, it's about something bigger than that, divine love, the loving forces of the universe. How do we relate to that?
Mm.
And why would we? And that can
Yeah.
be tricky for many to know how to do that, or even to look for that.
Well, and it's nice now just having examples of the impact of spirituality. So you've shared your personal experience, which is helpful because not a lot of people have had that kind of loss suddenly, myself included. So we have this data point, your experience, how spirituality helped you profoundly to find meaning in the hardest moments of life. And I just had this other example, which is Shakespeare, but Romeo and Juliet, right? From what I remember in high school when we read that book, you know, when what something like when one of them died, or they thought the one had died, the other one took their life, right? Like I forget, one of them died and the other one took their life, but it turned out that they didn't die. But the point being, there wasn't a spirituality component there. And you talk about mental health, like how spirituality helps mental health and depression. Like here's the opposite extreme, where something happens and then we do something as drastic as that. And unfortunately, those kind of things do happen at times with mental health and depression. And so just having this practice, and that being said, as you said, it doesn't make it easy. Like I've run, like a lot of the monks here, it's really beautiful. Radhanath Swami has arranged so that the parents of all these monks can come and live in the community. So that instead of them living 3 hours away in Mumbai, they can be here and be in this culture and have their own room and space and food. And because the monks are there serving, they've given their lives. And so Radhanath Swami has arranged that all the mothers and fathers, any that are alive, can stay here. And so, as I get to talk to the monks, like some of them, their parents are navigating a health challenge. Some of them have passed, some of them, of course, are doing fantastic. And so sometimes when I get talking with the monks who have lost a parent or whose parents are struggling with their health, I ask them, you're so deeply spiritual. I'm curious, what is your experience like as you think about loss? And they're very honest, and they're like, it's hard, it's sad. But they've all said, and in totally independent conversations, but having this community, having this brotherhood, this community of seekers where they can lean on each other, they can support one another and help navigate. And so again, just goes to show this idea of to love, to be loved, to support one another, and in the importance of spirituality in our
Yeah.
everyday life.
Yeah. And that's like, I think when I think about that, like when I can feel my connection with something divine, when I can fully feel it and trust into it, I feel like if I can have this, I can survive anything. If I can be connected to something greater than myself, which isn't always the case, it can be fleeting, then everything makes sense because and it's hard to explain that rationally because it isn't always logical because it is hard. Loss is hard. Even the monks say that, even though they know that the soul goes back to God and their parents will be fine or their loved ones, it still is because we are in having this human experience, and that's part of it. It's okay to struggle with loss and struggle with the divine, struggle with spirituality. And
Mm.
it's okay, but there is a system in place that we can explore and access, and it's our human right. And it can be tricky. Like some here who have parents might be thinking, well, my teenagers, they don't want to know anything about God, and that's okay. It's their own awakening journey. Every individual has their own independent journey. Yes, we can influence them, but ultimately, the personal experience is catered to them by the divine at the time that is right for them. It's not ours to micromanage and, or manipulate or think that we know better than the divine, perhaps. And
Yeah.
Jack, coming to your own experience, I was with a lot of words, I don't know how efficiently I was explaining the impact of, let's just call it spirituality in my life, and in how it kind of was the web that in a way saved me and gave me hope and a trajectory, even if it was hard and it took me many years. We're now getting towards 19 years of me being a widow. And for me, it's easy. Like you said, I have an example that is pretty unique, maybe, but also kind of extreme. So hopefully it can be helpful. But how about you? Like, you don't have a big loss in that way. You have other big things that happened in your life that not everybody has experienced, but most people have experienced some of the things that you've navigated, like health issues or obesity, addiction, it's anxiety, right? Workaholism, things that you've kind of shared about previously as well. How would you say, what would you say, like in the final circle in the retreat, you heard my acknowledgement towards seeing your transformation as a result of bhakti yoga and spirituality. I feel like it has immensely impacted how you navigate stress and anxiety and all the things. But what would you say, like your relationship, your personal relationship with the divine? Can you speak a little bit about that? What it might have, how it might have shown up in your life, and what would you say is might be different now versus maybe 5 years ago, just to make an example of how your heart has expanded. Because,
Yeah.
and I'm going to pre-frame one more thing while you think. When I first met you, you led workshops that were called Lead with Your Heart, because that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to open your heart. It's almost like you were searching for something, although you wouldn't maybe say it in those words at the time. And you led this same workshop for years, over and over around the globe. And it was a beautiful workshop. And a lot of that methodology is today in the retreats and in our community. But now, compared to then, how would you say your personal relationship is with the divine, and how has it changed how you think and behave, how you relate? Does anything come to mind if you were to use your own experience as an example?
Yeah. Yeah. So first, I just want to say, just going back a little bit, you talked about like teenagers and not being ready for God. When I was a teenager, I was not ready for spirituality or religion or God, or, it just was not ready until my late 20s. And I appreciate though when parents like you, and I'll do a shout out to our friend Evelina, from Finland, who was just with us in India. And specifically Evelina, she's just signed up to come again next year, and she'd really like to bring her teenage son. And she also recognizes, like, she knows it would be so deeply helpful and nourishing for him, but he's a teenager, and he's not super thrilled about like going to India. But she's respecting, she's like, hey, like, she's not forcing him, she's holding space. If he doesn't want to go, not going to force. So I guess I just want to point out that, yeah, there's a time when we're ready. And so my relationship with the divine, well, something that I've been realizing, in one sense, it's pretty darn obvious, but it's that I'm not God. As in, like, each individual one of us, like, we sometimes live as though we're the center of the universe. I know I can be guilty of that, but I mean, I can barely get through a podcast without having to run and go pee. If I can't even control my bladders, I'm definitely not the creator of this universe. And so, recognizing, again, just this human condition, that there's something greater at work here. So that helps. I guess that's just a point that helps me realize there is something. There's something. You look up in the star when we were doing the kirtans, down by the Yamuna River, and the fire ceremony, and looking up at the stars. It's just like, man, this didn't just randomly happen. This is not just a little science experiment that's going on for some years. But I guess my relationship, there's different ways. So I'll just share, and this is something actually Radhanath Swami shared about at our retreat. There's 3 different ways that you can relate with the divine, and they're all accurate. And in Bhakti Yoga, they're all happily accepted and welcomed. And so the first way to connect with the divine is this, like, this ultimate absolute truth, this big white light, this kind of like this idea of like, God is everything, God is everywhere, in a way we are God, because essentially God is everything. And there's truth, and that's called Brahman. And so that is an element of the absolute truth, the supreme. But then there's this idea, which I also find beautiful, that God or the divine is within each of our hearts. That's called the super soul, the Paramatma. So within our heart, and that's that idea when we kind of just like have a hunch or an intuition or just like a feeling or a gut. It's like just like an inner knowing, and trusting ourselves, going within versus seeking validation externally. So this idea that God is within each and every one of our hearts, the heart of every living being, not just humans. And then that's the Paramatma. And then this third idea of divinity or God is essentially a personal relationship. So one that has that you can connect with. You can have a loving reciprocation. This idea of to love and to be loved.
Like
It's
Jesus,
a relation.
would you say?
Like Jesus, like Krishna, like exactly. And so some that you can have a personal relationship, you can pray to, you can have a conversation with, you can envision. And so what I love about Bhakti Yoga is that all 3 of those are true, right? This idea that God is all pervading, everywhere, nature, white light, and the sun, like everything. This idea that divinity is within our heart, and this idea that divinity is personal, such that we can pray to and have a conversation and a loving relationship with. So that's conceptual. Like those are kind of the 3 ideas, and I resonate and believe all of them. And I guess, through Bhakti Yoga, I'm developing this personal relationship, this idea of being able to, like, that's when we're chanting mantra. It's not just a mechanical thing, but it's like calling out to divinity, and the Maha Mantra is like the names of the feminine and the masculine. And it's this idea of like calling out, like the strongest love is like the love, whether it's a mother for their child or a lover for their partner, in separation. So it's like calling out, like, it's kind of like, I'm in this material world, I'm entangled, I'm like, I can't even hold my bowels together, I can't, I'm just like, I'm a human going through all these, human experiences, and just calling out to divinity, craving this love, this prema, this divine love, a love kind of more than just that kind of simple love. So those are some ideas that come to mind. and I'm still early on the journey, you know, so I guess you see some shift in me. And at the same time, my heart is still cracking open. It's still curious. It still has questions. You know, I wouldn't say it has doubts in the sense that, like, you know, am I doing something wrong? But it's still developing faith. It's still cultivating faith. And I think that's healthy too, you know, not to just blindly, because sometimes people blindly believe, right, and become fanatical. And sometimes people blindly reject. And, you know, it's like, this is no, not true, I'm not accepting it. And so just in this space of seeking and being curious and asking questions and truthfully just talking about it, I find healthy. Like even if I don't have the perfect answer for you, it's actually just really nice to be able to talk about it and see what comes up and you know, be on the journey.
I love that. So I love the different forms or definitions or layers of God that you described. And also, I love what you said about developing faith. It doesn't have to be something that you just kind of, you know, find in you and then everything turns magical. It is not necessarily how it happens for many of us. It's something we are in inquiry around, something we develop, and it develops us perhaps in return as well. And so, all this kind of bringing it back to your own experience, I love how you said that your heart still cracks open and there's questions in it and less of doubts. Like I remember in the beginning you had lots of doubts, and it feels like all of that fear has melted away that was kind of behind the doubts. Or what I notice in you is that there's less anxiety and there's more yes. You know, you say more yes to things um before I felt like there was more worries, and it seems like you've been able to relax into a reality that is safer for you. And that's really beautiful. And I'm happy for you because it means that when we develop faith, we have less anxiety, right? Because workaholism is based on anxiety, maybe. And so it's really beautiful to witness that. And it's a powerful example too, Jack. Most people I see today are over functioning, high functioning or over functioning individuals in the West who have access to everything. And though there's not a sense of belonging. And I love how you said, even about the aspect of our soul, the Paramatman, if that belongs to God, if it's part of God, and it makes me feel like we already belong, that we don't have to work so hard for it. Maybe what we need to or could feel called to do is develop our own sense of faith. And I love that you do that. So I have next question ready for you. When I was listening to you explain what your insights have been now, you know, when you first learned about bhakti yoga, and every person you met, you asked them, what do you believe in? You know, and you know, you were very, like, that was the question you asked any person, I think, especially if they were of Indian origin. And what is your question now to the monks? Because you are like researching a topic really intensely. Do you have something like that going on right now as you sit with the monks every day?
Yeah. Yeah. So just before I share kind of what I'm asking the monks, so this in Bhakti Yoga, there's a Sanskrit term. It's called Achintya Beda Beda, and what it means, what it translates to, is that divinity, Achintya, is inconceivable. Like, come on, like God, divinity. I mean, if we just look at this earth, this universe, like it's inconceivable. We can't really wrap our heads around it. So divinity is achintya, inconceivable, and then beta, abeta, which means inconceivably the same and different from us. So God is, and that's why it's inconceivable, because it's almost like an oxymoron, or it's like we're a double negative or something. We're saying God is inconceivably the same as us and simultaneously different from us. And so examples that are used in the yogic texts like the Vedas is the sun, right? So the sun up in the sky, there's the sun up in the sky, and then there's the rays of sun that are coming in your window right now. So in one way, you could say that like, oh, yeah, the sun is in your room, right? Like the sun, you can see the sun is in your room. And it's true, the rays of the sun are in your space, but they're not, so it's like that is the sun, but it's not exactly the source of the sun. There's also a source. And so that's where like divinity is like the sun, the source, and then yeah, we are like the rays of the sun. And another example is like a fire, right? Like there's a spark. There might be a spark that comes off and lands on your marshmallow or vegan hot dog, and it's like, okay, in one way, yes, that spark is the same as the fire, but it's also different, right? It's also not the source. And so that, I mean, that just, I guess, came to my mind thinking about it. But you ask, I guess the question that's really been on my mind these days is, it ties to purpose. And it's like when I see these monks and when I see them, the work that they do and how hard they work and how much love they put into their work, it's so inspiring for me, because I can get caught up in just like catching up on emails or updating the website or planning the next thing. And in one way, I mean, we love what we do, right? It's super, the mission, the essence of what we get to do. But you know, sometimes we're just kind of going through the details, right? You're doing emails and stuff. And so I've just really been asking questions about and wanting to get connected so that everything I do is like an act of seva. Everything I can do is like with this loving devotional mood. Because when I see the monks do it, the yogis here at the eco village, sometimes they're doing big projects that are very significant, and sometimes they're doing very simple, meaningful, and they're like, I'm sitting on the floor, they're serving me my dinner. Here's a medical doctor who's also an MBA, here's an MBA and a corporate lawyer and a nuclear physicist and a medical doctor and everybody's an engineer, and they're just so happy to like bring me more vegetable curry or bring me some more rice or lentils. And just seeing the love and they just genuinely want to serve. They just genuinely want to please and like really to please their community. And so I've been asking them about, I want to really live in that mood. I don't want, imagine that where like none of all of our tasks, everything that we did, from our yoga practice, of course, in the morning, to our meditation practice or our chanting, to our preparing of our food, to our checking our emails, doing our kind of laptop work. Imagine if all of that was like done as a service, as an offering to the divine. That's bhakti yoga. And I'm just like honest with these guys. I'm just like, I'm so inspired by you because I realize I got a long way to go. But that's part of the journey. That's part of the practice. And so I guess that's some of the inquiry I'm in.
That is really beautiful. Imagine living like that, in that kind of a loving mood
Yeah.
where, and so why do they do this? Why do they want to go get you more vegetable curry with such enthusiasm and love?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I talked to Gore Nataraj, who's a young 25-year-old, right? He's like almost young enough to be my son, 25-year-old boy from Portugal. And we went for a swim. We went for a swim. We didn't take the group there, but there's a river across the road. Anyways, we went this beautiful swim. And I was asking him that. I was essentially saying, like, how do you do this? Well, why? How do you do it with such love and devotion? And he's like, he believes, which is good, he believes everything that we read in the yogic texts, which, essentially teach us when we practice this bhakti yoga, when we cultivate this loving relationship with the divine, we won't have to keep taking human births. We won't have to keep being reincarnated and having and learning these lessons and picking up karma. Eventually, we go back to, the Christians would call it heaven. The yogis would have different names for it, but essentially going back to be in this loving, eternal relationship with the divine. And so this 25-year-old Portuguese boy, he's like, I'm eager. I'm committed to doing everything I can to getting things figured out this life. Not I don't want to spend 10 or 100 or 1,000 more lives. And again, this is where it gets inconceivable, because we can't really fathom what it's like after death. And you experienced that the soul is eternal. Your husband Jens's soul continued, but we can't really conceive exactly what happens. So to answer your question, they want to, yogis use the term become enlightened, or Buddhists use the term become enlightened, go back to having this loving relationship, go to heaven, whatever each of us want to call it. They want to, if you want to think of a video game, they want to win the game.
Yeah.
They want to, get all the codes and rescue the princess, get to level chapter 8, in Super Mario Brothers, whatever it is, get to that final destination, the final destination, which is a loving relationship with divinity. So that's why they do it.
Right.
That's why they do everything.
Right. So serving curry lovingly to you will please God and strengthen that person's relationship with the loving forces of the universe. Is that?
Yeah, and it will please me. And that's the other thing. I think it's really beautiful. It's not just about serving God, and it's not just about serving the most senior spiritual teacher like Radhanath Swami, although of course people are happy to do that, but it's about serving everybody, serving those in need, serving the children, serving the women of the village, serving your brothers, serving the impoverished, and certainly serving your brothers and sisters in the community. And by doing that, that pleases divinity. That pleases, and again, I mean, you can just see that. It just makes them happy. It makes me happy. I'm like, this is great. Oh my goodness, like I'm just being treated with such love, and they're so happy. And it's just a beautiful way to live life. And even if it's not exactly like that when we come back home to Canada, and it's a little bit more Western and a little bit more entangled in the material world, like it's really inspiring to experience, even if just for a week, to come to Govardhan Eco Village and to experience it and to feel it and to bring that back with us.
To be loved in that way is paradigm shifting, feeling that love, and then we get opportunities also to serve when we go visit. So it is really beautiful. It's the environment, like the impact. It's like more love. It's like there's a cumulative effect. When we treat each other with love, then we're more likely to respond to things with more ease and love. It's like it kind of multiplies.
Yeah. And it helps me kind of develop faith and develop trust by witnessing.
Mm.
right? And these, like, they're not like taught, like, I'm only sharing this because I asked the question.
Yeah.
They're not like, hey, look at me, I'm doing this service. They're just doing it. And I'm just like sitting there with my jaw dropped. I'm like, come on, like, I'm like waiting for, I'm almost like waiting for one of them to like be annoyed with having to do this service, but it's just not there. And
Yes.
I'm just, I'm like putting my, my selfish tendencies at times, like I'm like putting that on them, but it's not there. And so
Yeah.
that
And
helps build faith and trust.
right. And you're such a great example for that because you're such a hardworking person in other ways. Like you probably could be sitting there thinking like, oh, I gotta go write my emails, go check my inbox, or like you might have in the past that could have
Yeah.
been your patterning, and now you're like swimming in this ocean where they also want you to go get your emails done, but they do it with such love, and you can see their priorities are so different, I imagine.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I'm still taking care of emails and stuff, but I'm not missing out on these opportunities. Like it's, just every chance I get,
Yeah.
it's like I'll sit and lunch will go for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
because I just want to keep just being in this conversation and having this association.
Yeah, and that was not how you were in the past. That's really
Yeah.
beautiful that you now allow yourself to be really present in
Mm.
those beautiful conversations. And by the way, I want to say, like, I'm sure they take care of all of their responsibilities. It's not like they neglect their other work.
Yeah.
They do everything, but it seems like they do it with a different purpose. It comes back to what you mentioned about the question you ask them is around purpose.
Yeah.
So that's
It's such a gift, and again, just being able to have the experience to share it with loved ones, to share it with all of you, it's so grateful. And but yeah, beautiful conversation. Thank you for being here, Hanna. Shout out to Sue, Diane, Rita, Charlotte, Karen, Eula. Love it. We got Wesley, Yaswat. Beautiful to have you all here with us. And yeah, so sending all the love, high vibes from Govardhan Eco Village. If you'd love, if this sounds like crazy talk, well, you're probably not listening any longer. But if you're inspired, then join us next year. Eula's coming back. Rita might be bringing a crew from South Africa, and many other yogis are coming back as well. But we're sending all of our love, high vibes, and wishing you an amazing rest of the day. Namaste.
namaste.